This is False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm John Buhler, staff writer, fanside.com. I'm joined today by a man who didn't dress like a loser today because, his team didn't play this week and his NFL team, who might lose, plays tomorrow with Cooper Rush. But I sure as hell did. Cody Williams, content director, fanside.com. How are you, man?
Don't worry, dude. We're just bookending this with losses because Carolina basketball did, in fact, lose last night. And then the
Yeah.
Cowboys are for sure going to get their ass kicked tomorrow. But, all things considered, doing pretty good, man. How you doing?
Yeah, it was the pizza me and the Arizona State podcast and my dad made was really good, but that was the highlight of about between 3:30 and 7:30 today for me.
Yeah, those 4 hours did not go particularly well for you. Did not go well for us because we both picked Georgia to win that game. So tough scenes for both of us.
I guess Lane Kiffin is that special, you know.
Something like that. Or maybe Pete
Yeah.
Golding's that special because yeah, the defense was kind of the story of that game for me.
I've got some thoughts about Georgia for days now. Say some here, say some more on Monday, once I have my Stephen B. Swift second take.
That's right.
But let's run real quick. Let's run with this. This is a good thing. Let's run with the fact that Ole Miss and Alabama looked disgustingly good today,
Mhm.
and the performances that they put in crucial SEC games leads me to believe if they play like that, they can win a national title.
100%, dude. Like I think with Ole Miss, we kind of got misled by them basically getting banged up on the offensive line and how badly that affected what they were able to do on offense. The offensive line is mostly intact. Like there's still some injuries that they're dealing with, but mostly intact. And they kept Georgia pretty much at bay. Like they didn't they didn't hang a 60 burger on Georgia like they did Arkansas or anything like that, but they ran the ball well, which is not something they've done very often this year. They ran it down Georgia's throat, frankly, and then Georgia's DBs, for as talented as they are, could not cover Ole Miss to save their lives in throughout that entire game. And Lane Kiffin, we know what an offensive mind he is, and it felt like this was the first time I've seen Lane Kiffin in a big game not try to like win the game with one play. He looked like he had a plan and he executed that plan consistently throughout the game. And if he's going to coach like that, this Ole Miss team is talented enough to definitely make a deep run in the playoff.
I didn't see him on the telecast, but I think Charlie Weiss Jr. was up there in the booth eating butter with some ruffles like his dad does.
A
He
hundred percent.
He was in his bag. I think I said beforehand, or we talked about this game on Thursday. I said Georgia can win if Carson Beck plays poorly. Ole Miss can't win if Jackson Dart plays poorly. Beck played pretty good. It kind of snowballed there at the end, but it wasn't his
Hmm.
fault. It was exactly what you forecasted of how Ole Miss could win. The whole Tate Ratledge injury, they were reshuffling the offensive
Hmm.
line. Bobo's Bozo the Clown. What an
Yeah. We've
absolute
got to get Bobo the hell out of there, man. It's awful.
got to get the hell out of there. Got to get Glenn Schumann the hell out of there too, man. They got to get two new coordinators yesterday. It's like
Mhm.
I'm watching the game with my dad. He's like, Beck had no time. Beck is just getting smoked down there. It's going to cost him millions of dollars because Kirby wants to hire his friends and yell at people as opposed to be accountable and get somebody who's actually good.
No, 100%. Like we'll unpack Georgia a little bit further, a little bit later in the program tonight. But I do want to like Ole Miss, the thing, like why I forecasted that of how Ole Miss could win is that defensive front has been like coalescing over the past few games that they played. We've seen Walter Nolan start to realize his potential. We've seen Princely, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, transfer from Florida, come in and he's actually been a force off the edge the entire year, but now they're all coming together at the exact same time. And Carson Beck's life was hell in this game, like absolute hell for 60 minutes. And yeah, he did not like this was not Beck's worst performance. It looks bad on the stat line, but it's not his fault that he like Georgia couldn't establish the run at all. ETN or Frazier really never got anything going. And it just like you said, it snowballed really quickly. And it's a credit to Ole Miss that they were able to capitalize on that because we've seen Ole Miss have momentum in their favor. We saw it in the LSU game and they still lost. And so the fact that they were able to get up off the mat after that game, knowing that this was kind of make or break for their college football playoff chances, and they were able to not just beat Georgia, but beat them handily. It says a lot about the makeup of this team, and it kind of, it to at least to me, as someone who is very high on what Ole Miss was capable of coming into the season, I feel vindicated because this is what I imagined when I was thinking about this team.
100%. The big thing that I really liked about the game, besides Kiffin had all of his really good coaching staff all firing on all cylinders. Pete Golding did fantastic. Like
Mhm.
he actually, like Pete Golding actually performed up to what his name has been. He's been a lot of just he's been the Tevin Downey of defensive coordinators forever, all sizzle no steak.
He's been
But he
Pete
was
Bronzing for a while.
but he was pretty good today. And Charlie Weiss Jr. fantastic as well. Probably the biggest reason, besides seeing it all kind of coalescing with the pass rush, looking like the Georgia units and Alabama when they were national championship contenders. The big thing for me watching the game is, for lack of a better word, prior to this game, I've looked at Ole Miss and be like, this is a glamour program. The SEC, they play essentially what Lincoln Riley wants to play,
Yeah.
but they're better at it. But like looking at the ominous sky, weather was awful. They weren't afraid to get dirty. They weren't afraid
Mhm.
to, get their, they weren't afraid about it. They were about that. And if you're about that, yes, you're going to be playing like in a dome or whatever in the playoffs or whatever. But like in this situation, like, okay, there's a grit, there's a mental toughness that this Ole Miss team has that most others don't with that talent level. And that's why I think that if they get the right matchup, if they get to Atlanta or whatever, like they can win it all.
100%. And I also think that, you say if they get the right matchup, they've won in different ways many times
Yeah.
this season. Like you look at last week, they hung 63 on a good Arkansas team. Like Arkansas is not like a pushover. Like, yeah, Ole
No.
Miss is better than Arkansas, no doubt about it. But like they hung 60 points on them. So if Ole Miss gets in a shootout, we know they have the weaponry and the arsenal and the scheme with Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. to absolutely keep up in that type of game. But like you just said, they were in a muddy, rainy rock fight today, and they had the bigger rock, quite frankly. Like that, like the fact that they can win multiple ways, that said again, that's why I was high on Ole Miss coming into the year. One of the areas they paid a lot of attention to was in the trenches because, you mentioned they for a long time played the glamour style of football and not really focused on how to win in the SEC, how to get down and dirty in these types of games. Now they have the horses to be able to do that, and we saw it all come together today. And now they're sitting super pretty because while there's still a lot of chaos that's still left to happen in the SEC, Ole Miss is kind of free of that. Ole Miss has Mississippi State, and I'm trying to remember who the other game is, but it's not someone that I'm worried about when it comes to Ole Miss.
No, like they're pretty much good at this point to get to the playoff right now. Like I don't know if they'll get to Atlanta, but the if the SEC is going to get four teams in, they're probably going to be one of them. And speaking of the Big Rock, Alabama has the Big Rock back in a healthy Jalen Milroe. Yeah, apparently
Yeah.
him not being healthy was an issue, and all he did was basically to Brian Kelly. Jesus H. Christ. Oh my God, your defense is terrible.
Dude, like LSU, Jalen Milroe has to keep Brian Kelly like up at night with nightmares and stuff like that because I don't know if you saw this stat on the broadcast, but over the past 2 years against LSU, Jalen Milroe now has over 300 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns. Holy hell. Like just beating your brains in with that big rock.
Dude, that's like Kirk Cousins versus the Bucks. It's the
Yeah,
same thing.
correct. Exactly.
Also, I don't know if you saw this stat, but like under Brian Kelly, like in night games, they're like 13 and 0. Now they're 13 and 1.
13-1 with a handy one.
If that one could be zero, it would be, but it's still one. It's bad. But yes, Alabama, even though the secondary still kind of frustrates me at times because it's that talented, but when Milroe's doing what we just saw, I don't know if there's when Milroe is on his A game, I don't know if there's a better quarterback in college football. Like when he's doing that, that's I don't know who else can really do that for that long.
Yeah, I mean, he honestly through the air didn't do a whole lot. I think he ended up with like 110 passing yards or somewhere around there. So like he didn't even have to do a whole lot through the air. But Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan called a hell of a game. Like the motion that they were running had LSU's defense in just complete shambles, like before the balls even snapped. So like It was a hell of a game called there. And then I do want to give credit to this Alabama defense because even if Jalen Milroe and Alabama were going to have this offense performance, I thought LSU would be able to score. I thought LSU was going to be able to, Garrett Nussmeier was going to have a big game. I still have concerns about this secondary, but I'm going to amend that moving forward to where if you can't run the ball against them and they don't have to respect the run against you, then the secondary is going to be fine. It's when you have a balanced offense, but LSU does not have that. So since they could drop back and just rush forward and not blitz, they were perfectly fine. Garrett Nussmeier is going to take a lot of heat for this game. I don't think he deserves it. He actually kept them in this game a lot longer than LSU should have been in this game. And yeah, he had some untimely turnovers, a turnover in the red zone and stuff like that. So like, yeah, he wasn't perfect, but like the rest of LSU is what let them down, not Garrett Nussmeier.
That's true. I do have a Nussmeier take. I've been trying to figure this out. Like he's the most frustratingly good quarterback. Like I don't know if Beck's good anymore. Like I think he's just in his head. I mean, it's gonna be a long time driving back on I-20, and I see winners win, and just see his stupid ass getting grinned on the sideline. Like I'd rather see Alex Shinara with 2-2-2, 2-2-2-2. Alex Shinara is not licensed to practice law in Georgia, but you can talk to one of his representatives, and this is what start.
That's right. Yeah, just give him a call if you need some shady legal help.
Definitely, he'll fight for you or whatever. Doesn't matter, but yeah, rough day for Morgan and Morgan. But either way, I've been trying to figure out with Nussmeier. I'm like, he's talented. I think right now he's Cam Ward of last year. Like, there's just like
Okay.
I'm like, I love the talent. As soon as I want to be all in, there's like a dumb pick or the team loses, and it's just like, ah,
Yeah.
it,
He
yeah,
definitely needs another year. Like
yeah.
he should not come out in the draft this year. I think he might still because like Todd McShay now at the Ringer just released his like quarterback rankings. He had Nussmeier as QB too. So like there are going to be NFL people because Todd McShay doesn't put out rankings without having a little bit of information behind it. So like I do think that there's a chance that he does leave, but ideal world he stays another year because like the talent's clearly there and he just needs to put some polish on it the way Cam Ward has to a large degree this season. But to the Alabama point, because we do want to give Alabama their flowers, like I think or at least me personally, I think one of the things I've said about Alabama was that they are a high variance team. And I think one of the things that this game showed, and one of the things that they've kind of been shoring up a little bit over the past few weeks, has been kind of closing the gap on that variance and by that I mean like raising the floor a little bit. Like a bad Alabama game, they can still beat you because Jalen Milroe, when healthy, is that type of game-changing force. And we saw what it looks like tonight. And it's not just the LSU defense. Like he had an extra gear that hadn't been there the past few weeks. Like the bye week did wonders for him to get healthy and be able to use his mobility. So like now that you have that trump card in your back pocket, now all these weapons become amplified. Ryan Williams running in motion becomes something that defenses just really can't account for. You're getting I'm totally blanking on his name, the Kendrick Law, their wide receiver, like getting him back healthy. Like you're starting to see this Alabama offense really get healthy. And when this offense is healthy and Milroe has his legs at full capacity, the floor is raised so much higher that that high variance that we saw against teams like Vandy, that we saw against teams like Tennessee, is not quite the same level.
Totally agree there. Yes. It's just when Alabama's good, it's good. And when it's not, it's not.
Yeah.
Is the ride going to be open at Six Flags today? I don't know.
TBD. TBD. I have a fast pass, but who knows if it's open.
I don't know if we're gonna I don't know if we're gonna fast pass here. Let's run with the next topic here.
Yeah, so let's run with this and we're gonna switch conferences a little bit and take a look at the Big Ten because Big Ten took care of business today. At least the college football playoff contenders in the Big Ten took care of business today. And as the SEC is starting to get more chaotic and we're starting to see, teams kind of fall out, like I don't know what world Texas A&M gets into the playoff now with Ole Miss like kind of basically leapfrogging them with a better win than what they have on their resume. LSU is obviously out of the picture. Alabama's still in, or now vaults into the picture, but now Georgia's playoff viability is in question. And it's basically makes, to me at least, Tennessee versus Georgia next week like a playoff contender. The Big Ten's getting four teams into this playoff because where they were positioned and then what they did this week, I don't see how any of those teams are dropping out, barring just catastrophe, frankly.
Well, Oregon took care of business versus Maryland. Penn State, a very impressive win over Washington. Obviously, we saw Ohio State take the coffin that is Ryan Walters' career and throw it in the old Tangy upside down. So he's getting face to face with that dirty water.
You know the meme with the dude like giving the peace sign in front of the grave? Yeah, that was Ryan Day today.
And and also congratulations on Coach Sig having a new having a potential son-in-law. Do you see that?
Yes, I did. Congratulations. I'm very happy for Coach Sig.
Yes, they beat Michigan 20 to 15. Michigan's still not bowl eligible. That's crazy.
It's wild. I will say though, like, people are gonna look at this Indiana result, and we've talked a whole lot of crap about Michigan, and I think deservedly so based on the expectations coming off of a national championship. But this was an impressive performance from Indiana because we haven't seen them have to get down and dirty. Like we saw them pass the test of playing from behind. They fell behind 10-0 to Michigan State, scored 47 unanswered. But we haven't seen them have to get in the mud like they had to in this game. And you look at this matchup with Michigan and you look at the rest of Indiana's schedule. This is by far the highest caliber of athlete that Indiana's played this entire season. And particularly in the trenches. You're looking at Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, and these dudes coming up against this offensive line. And they actually did a good job of shutting down this Indiana offense. They had under 250 yards of total offense in this game. Granted, the defense stepped up and made Michigan's offense look like Michigan's offense, but like the fact that you're able to get in the mud in a game where you're not everything is working exactly the way you want it to and still be able to pull out a hard-fought victory against a team as talented as Michigan is, even if they've underperformed this season, that says a lot about this team once again. And like I'm running out of reasons that someone could come up with to not believe in Indiana at this point.
I wish the winning margin would have been like the same sort of narrative of like, well, they're smoking everybody. It didn't exactly smoke Michigan here. I feel
Mhm.
like that's something where someone could like poke a hole in it, and then I don't know if you can play like that and beat Ohio State. I feel like that's just they can get to a higher gear here. But at that point, you beat Michigan pretty much no matter what happens versus Ohio State, unless it's like the worst loss of all time. You win Purdue and get the Old Oaken bucket. You're 11-1. You're sitting pretty, and that's kind of where I go with the Big Ten. It's like I know what Oregon's capable of. I know what Ohio
Mhm.
State's capable of. I have reservations at Penn State, and today with Indiana, I'm like, maybe I'm not like, maybe they're not perfect, and
Yeah,
that's okay. But like at that point, like they're both going to probably go 11-1. God, it'd be hilarious if Penn State went like 10-2. If they go 10-2, they're not getting in.
no, 100%. Like these teams can't lose again. Or sorry, I apologize. Indiana can still lose. Penn State can't lose again. Ohio State can probably lose to Indiana. They definitely can't lose to Michigan. I think if they a loss to
Yes.
Michigan would definitely put at least a question mark on this, especially if with Indiana having the win over Michigan. So like that's one to watch out for. I don't think that's going to happen, to be very clear. Like I think Ohio State is just a lot better than Michigan this year, more so than they have been in previous years when they've lost. So like I do, but like Penn State is the one team of the four Big Ten college football playoff contenders. Sorry, I almost tripped over every single word in that sentence there for a second. But the one team out of that group of four that I think can't afford a loss because they're still getting the benefit of the doubt. Frankly, they're probably going to be like ranked top four in the new CFP, new AP top 25 rankings because of the chaos we saw today. But it's hard to say that they're like the fourth best team in the country at this point.
No, I know. It's like I'm sitting there like I'm sure you'll probably talk about that on Goldilocks. Like I'm just not buying that at all. Like
No.
I feel like you could basically say like immediately like yeah, that's something I've got problems with. But the Ohio State thing is probably the interesting component here because like I think they're the second best team in the Big Ten, but they've got the loss to the best team in Oregon. We'll see what happens when they play the who I think is the third best team in Indiana. But if you've got two losses there, like and then you beat the fourth best at Penn State, so I don't know. A two-loss Ohio State team is not a guarantee that they're going to get it, but it's probably. I'd say like 80-20, they'd probably get in. That
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they're at the number two seed really works in their favor. Like you that we're at the point of the season now where you have to consider where teams are ranked. And like I do think like, you look at a Georgia and like what this loss means for them and their ranking, that's going to be interesting. But like the deeper we get into the season, the higher you are in the rankings is going to help you. I mean, that's just plain and simple because like say Ohio State goes into the final week of the season ranked number two in the college football playoff rankings and they lose to Michigan. Okay, that means they're eliminated from the Big Ten championship game, so they're not going to take another loss. And are you really going to drop them 10 spots out of the top 12? Probably not.
I think that's fair. The Big Ten was not as important as the SEC or even the ACC was this week. And I'm gonna pass on this next topic. I'm gonna see if I can read this correctly. Got brain work. I'm gonna pass on Georgia and Miami being the clear-cut contenders we thought they were.
Mhm.
This time a week ago, we're like, oh yeah, Georgia and Miami are definitely playoff locks. And at this point, it's like, nah, I don't think so. It's kind of amazing how quickly that goes. Two totally different situations. So I'll start with Miami because we haven't talked about them yet.
Yeah.
We've been saying all year long they play with their food and they're going to get caught. And we had a
Mhm.
feeling that it was going to happen versus well-coached teams, either Duke or Georgia Tech. Duke played them tough, and then Georgia Tech played them tough. Georgia Tech just out executed them the whole time. Atlanta was turned, and I was joking with my dad. He's like, "Yeah, they're not going to tear down those goalposts." I'm like, "Those are probably like reinforced." I'm like, "Yeah, they'll probably get expelled for doing that."
Yeah, so the NC State podcast also moonlighted as a Georgia Tech podcast, obviously, and she happened to walk through as I was watching a video of the students carrying the goalposts through the streets of Midtown Atlanta, and I just looked at her and I was like, I don't know where the hell they're carrying these things because there's not a body of water really local to Georgia Tech's
You got to
campus.
go uphill to the Chattahoochee at that point.
That's a hell of a hike. That is a hell of a hike.
That's what makes Atlanta such a great place. Just shouldn't even be here. There's no real body of water. Who cares? Yeah, like none of the roads make sense. It's all basically based on what dogs and cattle did back in the day, and then Native Americans made a path on that, and then that's our roads.
100. I mean, still better than New Mexico where there's just like one road anywhere, but whatever.
They'd be like wondering, like, why is there like this bend here? Like, well, at that point there was a rock, and we decided not to move the rock, and that's why we don't have a grid system.
Sorry about it. Big rock.
Big rock. We'll call that peach tree.
I might just title this episode Big Rock, like because we mentioned big rocks in every segment to this point.
But I go back to Miami, and it's like the Mario of it all. I just kind of felt that like he got in his head here a little bit, and the gerbil was getting shocked because it was chewing on an extension cord.
I mean, like, I want to say that like I'm surprised by this, but not only did we say that this was a very losable game for Miami based on, coaching matchups and everything else, but like it was the exact formula that we talked about. The Miami defense had zero answer for the run game that included Haynes King. Like the creative run game that Georgia Tech runs, they had no answer for it at all. Georgia Tech put up 28 points, but they controlled the pace of the game, they controlled the clock, and they just moved the ball at will and put together sustained drives and got Miami out of a rhythm. On the flip side of that, because they were out of rhythm, Cam Ward wasn't Superman. Cam Ward didn't play bad, but Cam Ward wasn't just lighting up the opposing defense because it's a well-coached Georgia Tech defense, and he got completely out of rhythm. And that's exactly the formula that we're talking about. If you play with fire the way that Miami has so consistently this season, there's going to be a game where Cam Ward doesn't save you. And like that's not an indictment of Cam Ward. Cam Ward is still a great quarterback. Cam Ward is still a Heisman Trophy contender. But if you ask him to save you 7 out of your 12 games in the regular season, he's a 22-year-old at the end of the day. That's not going to happen. It's just not, especially against well-coached football teams like Georgia Tech.
Exactly. And I think Miami is still like in the driver's seat to potentially get to Charlotte just because like I think they got the head-to-head tiebreaker over Clemson because of the Louisville game.
Mhm.
Again, for the first time in God knows how long, Clemson is not playing Georgia Tech this season, which is
It's super
ridiculous.
weird. Yeah. I'm so indoctrinated to that being a game that just happens that like when we were talking about tiebreakers, when we were talking about this, that, and the other, I was like, oh, well, Clemson's definitely already beaten Georgia Tech this year. And I looked at their schedule. I was like, holy hell, they don't even play them. Like, what is this? What is happening?
No, that was not a protected rivalry because the ACC doesn't respect Georgia Tech, but they probably
The
should.
ACC doesn't know what they're doing, is what it really boils down to.
What did I say? It was like Jim Phillips is like the Doug Gottlieb you have at home.
Shouts to Doug Gottlieb, who I'm pretty sure is not off to the best of start as a college basketball head coach.
He's distracting him from something in Green Bay that's called the Packers with something that's called a Phoenix.
That's right.
I wonder if he gets booed at the grocery store like Aaron Rodgers used to.
I'm most likely. He's definitely not welcome at Thanksgiving, also like Aaron Rodgers.
Going to a dark place, and then yeah, obviously a dark place here with Georgia. I'll tie this in there. We did get a comment here from our friend Lefty asking about if the importance and the significance of all these games that are going to rehappen again. Like, what's the point of all these matchups? I'm like, well, I'm in the content business, so like, I want the best games. Like, I want to care about all these games. Like, I'm looking
Mhm.
like before he came on, we had to wait to see how Oklahoma and Missouri finished because Mizzou is still technically in it. We need to
Mhm.
see Virginia beat Pitt. Pitt was still technically in it. UVA is now one win away from going to a bowl game. If they win
Sh-
Commonwealth, they'll probably do it.
Shouts to the Whoopsie Daisy King, baby, coming through.
Anthony Calandria. But yeah, like I'm looking at this game with Georgia Ole Miss. Like under the old format, Georgia season's completely over.
Hmm.
Ole Miss would already be done. Ole Miss would not be playing with that crashing sense of urgency. They wouldn't haven't had an opportunity to get better. Maybe they both get in the playoff. Maybe Ole Miss is the 7th seed and Georgia's the 11th, and maybe they end up meeting in the semifinals or something down the line. Like that's kind of one of the things that like with like the NFL like division rivalry games, like you're a Cowboys fan, you hate the Eagles like so much, and obviously
Yes.
this year's not going very well for you. But like
No.
if they get you the first time, you hope you get them the second time around, and maybe you beat them in the playoffs, and maybe you beat them too.
Oh, you putting the Cowboys in the playoffs? We ain't coming close to that, brother.
No, I'm just saying in general, like I would love,
No, 100%.
yeah, like the Falcons have only played the Saints once in the playoffs, and that was in like '91 with Dome Patrol and Too Legit to Quit.
That's right. But no, so like I do want to ask you this, like how far do you think Georgia falls in the rankings after this loss? Because I'm worried about Georgia, and I think the perception of Georgia is crashing down just a little bit.
I think what is going to end up happening with them, again, I have not figured out how I would do my playoffs. You kidding me? Beforehand, so I would venture to guess Georgia's going to occupy about the same sort of spot that like Notre Dame, Alabama, or SMU were this past week. The 10, 11, 13 area is probably where they're going to be.
Okay, so I'm glad we're seeing it the same because the way I did it in the projected AP top 25, I have Georgia dropping to 12. That's a big drop, and don't get me wrong, but with the head-to-head win for Ole Miss, I have a hard time putting them behind Ole Miss, or excuse me, ahead of Ole Miss. I have a hard time putting them ahead of Alabama at this point since they both have equal records and Alabama has the head-to-head there. And then Notre Dame only has one loss. So like, what am I supposed to do with that? And granted, Georgia's two losses are not bad losses. You lost to Alabama and you lost to Ole Miss. Two very good teams, two teams that are like in line to be in the playoff right now. It would take a collapse for them to not be in the playoff right now, in my personal opinion. So you look at those two teams and you look at Georgia, and it's like, okay, how you stack these all up is a little is like gets really difficult because yes, Ole Miss has the head-to-head win. They also have a loss to Kentucky, who sucks. So like, but then you start to factor in Georgia almost lost to Kentucky. Probably should have if Mark Stoops wasn't scared. Mark Stoops wasn't scared. But like the thing I keep coming back to with Georgia, and the thing that really has me worried is the Clemson win continues to look worse because Clemson is just not that good of a football team. They're a good football team. They're definitely not very good or great. Then you look at the Texas game. that's starting to look like an outlier. We have not seen Georgia look like that against a high quality opponent at any other point this season. The only time we've seen them look anything close to that would be the second half against Alabama when Alabama was kind of letting its foot off the gas and almost got caught for doing that. So,
Like
like, I just wonder what Georgia actually is at this point.
the best, I think that I still, they're going to be somewhere between, like they could be where LSU was at 14. Like they could be that.
Mhm.
That's about as far as they could go.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I would say if we basically go through seeding, Texas would be two,
Yeah.
and you have the win over two. And that, even with that win over Texas, I still think Texas is a bit artificially inflated. I don't think they're as good as what that says. Like
Mhm.
maybe, but like that helps them a lot too. Um, I try to think like who you'd even like knock out. I mean, do you think Miami makes it falls out entirely? I think that's possible.
Yeah, I figuring out where to put Miami was honestly harder than where to put Georgia because I don't know, like, I don't know what they're going to, what the AP voters, what the college football playoff committee, I don't know what any of these entities are going to do with Miami because,
And
like, they'd already been suppressing them. They kept them at 4 as an undefeated team. Now you go on the road to lose to Georgia Tech. Is that confirmation bias and you just drop them down basically even with SMU at this point? Like, how far do you drop them at this point?
no idea. Also, Tennessee is going to be up there, and I don't buy into that at all. It depends.
Yeah.
I don't know if Nico's good. Nico might play next week, but I think it's an elimination game for both teams. But honestly, I think the urgency is more on Georgia, and it's at home. So Georgia hasn't lost at home since 2019.
No,
So
and I also like let's not act like Tennessee's been a world beater in any
no,
capacity. Like we have not seen the ceiling that we saw from Ole Miss at times this season, and certainly today, we have seen nothing like that from Tennessee at any point this season. Like, yes, they have the win over Alabama. That was an ugly game. Both teams did not play well. Tennessee just happened to play well in the second half and come out on top. But like that's not a game I'm like taking to the college football playoff committee and being like, look how good we are. Like you did not play well in that game at all.
for sure. So I'm sitting there before we move on to like our last topic of the day. I think with Miami, it's like this is I don't know if this is as good as it can kind of get for this season. It just kind of feels like there's limitation with Mario Cristobal. It's like it's the same thing with the Buccaneers to Todd Bowles. It's like you're going to be good, but when somebody else is better, you can't get there. Problem with Georgia is they got to get two new coordinators. Like
Mhm.
Bobo and Schumann can't aren't cutting it anymore. Like losing Muschamp and then losing Monken have it's been
Losing
pretty
Monken is,
yeah.
yeah, especially watching what the Ravens are currently doing and how that offense is running. It's like you really start to see what a blow that really is for this Georgia program.
Yeah, I feel with it is like you go back on like okay my my college friend the guy who was like my quarterback when I played there. Oh, his kid's in school. This is fun. He's playing on the team a little bit and whatnot, but it's just maddeningly frustrating because there's no adaptability. I
Hmm.
just feel like it just feels like he's just gaslighting Carson back into oblivion here. And Beck's just over here. He's like, "Am I stupid?" I'm like, I don't think you are, but I don't know what's going on, man.
I don't think you are, but you're playing like it because your coordinator is stupid. So like that's honestly what it boils down to. And like, I honestly, if we wanted to just simplify everything we've just said about Miami and Georgia into one thing, it goes back to a point you made a couple weeks ago. Coaching's never mattered more in this sport. And Georgia is deficient at both coordinator spots right now. I think more so in offense than on defense, but Glenn Schumann has not had a banner year by any stretch of the imagination. And then the Mario of it all in Miami. And then you look at the top of the rankings. You look at Oregon, coached by Dan Lanning and Will Stein, who have things humming. You look at Ohio State, who has Jim Knowles coaching what I think is the best defense in college football, and then Ryan Day and Chip Kelly together they may find one brain cell to make a functional offense with all of the talent that they have. You look at Texas, who has Sark, one of the best offensive minds in the business, and Kwiatkowski on the
Yeah.
defense side of the ball, who helped Jeff Choate, who I highly respect at Nevada, who nearly upset Boise State and Ashton Genty this evening. But like you look at the top of the sport and it's so clear how much this coaching matters. And then you look at the teams like Georgia and Miami and they're so clearly deficient based on what we've seen.
That's excuse me, that's hurt Alabama too. It's like
Hmm.
Nick Sheridan's got to learn how to do this. But you're also looking at who's uh, Womack too, the same sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
And even though we don't trust James Franklin at all, he's got two really good coordinators there in Tom Allen and Andy Koltnecki. So like that's helping him out a lot as well. But yeah, it's coming down to coaching. Maybe Schumann grows into it. I need a guy getting his wife's face tattooed right here. That's what I need.
We need that level of crazy to make the Georgia defense what it can be.
So I wrote something during the week about like referencing Nebraska hiring their Ernie McCracken and Bill Murray's character in Kingpin with Dana Holgerson. It's like the Amish guy wakes up and he has like just a crazy back tat.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
We
Thank
need
God I
that
didn't
guy.
make any bad decisions this evening.
You need that guy coaching defense for us. It's like we got to have some sort of screamer. We need like Will Muschamp just headbutting his way through like a window in a
100%.
car.
100%.
Where do you go like off of Bobo? Like, would I love Kirby would do it, but like I don't even know who you get.
I mean, this is thinking way outside the box, but like, I would assume that the Georgia OC position pays a little bit better than the South Florida head coaching job. So do you bring in an Alex Galesh or someone like that who runs a modern offense that is unique, has proven difficult to defend? Like, how do we, I mean, like that's like the pie in the sky idea that I came up with just now.
I don't hate that. I don't know if he necessarily would go because I mean he's doing something like he's got really good job security because like he actually wins games, whereas Jeff Scott wouldn't do that.
He refused flat out.
He refused. Try to think like if there's like a coach who's like who gets fired or something like that. I'll tell you what, I would do car wheels in the streets. Browns fire Kevin Stefanski. Just bring him in. I don't know. That'd be amazing.
That would be incredible.
Never happening. Never happening. I'll even, I'll even pay Charlie Weiss Jr. more money. Just get him here. Get Joe Cox in the building. See if he can do it.
I'd just
No, actually,
make your
no.
personal head explode and make Lincoln Riley like just pay Lincoln Riley's buyout, make him the OC at Georgia.
I don't think there's a man who has less vibes about Athens, Georgia than Lincoln Riley on the history of Earth.
I know. I just want to see your reaction is honestly the only reason I want that to happen.
He would go to the Last Resort Grill and have a nice dinner and just make an absolute scene.
Oh yeah,
It's
100%.
like, what
I
do you
can't
mean?
believe you would say this about me.
What do you mean I can't make a reservation?
Oh
I
God.
don't think you understand how this works. And let's get out of here, man. Let's punt. Let's get out of here. I'm tired of this sad back and crab Georgia team that I got to deal with. We're gonna probably unpack this a little bit more on Monday's show. There's a couple of other teams that kind of scratch this itch too, but the big one today is LSU. I think we're gonna punt on Brian Kelly ever really doing what he sought out to do and leaving Notre Dame in the SEC. He's 63. He's had
Mhm.
a Heisman winner at quarterback. He's got a guy who's going to be the first round, probably in 2 years. Garrett Nussmeier. He's getting coordinators. He's winning games, going on lengthy winning streaks. Can't win week one, but then at the end of the day, I'm like looking at this team like that's a 10-3 team. That's LSU football.
No, 100%. Like, we wanted to I think the 12 team playoff and what you were mentioning earlier about like, Ole Miss wouldn't have had a shot to play for anything today. LSU was in that boat too. And this is basically what we saw from LSU a year ago. Like Jaden Daniels was incredible and there were like the highs were unbelievable to watch, but the lows were low, man. Like the lows were not good and this team had some clear deficiencies, most of them on the defensive side of the ball last year. And for as much as I like Garrett Nussmeier, for as good of a player as I think he is, he's also not the singular game-changing talent that Jaden Daniels was. So like your offense is ostensibly worse because you don't have that element at quarterback to add to your rushing attack. So they don't have a rushing attack this year. And now they're headed to a 9-3 season, which is what they finished last year with the Heisman Trophy winner. Like Brian Kelly is coaching the exact same LSU team over and over again at this point. And like we're not seeing him elevate the program like we thought he could. Because when he came here from Notre Dame, the whole book was okay, Notre Dame under Brian Kelly was recruiting at a high level for Notre Dame based on the restrictions that they have academically and with their, Catholic ties and everything that goes into recruiting at Notre Dame. Now you get him to LSU where you're in a hotter recruiting hotbed. You're in a place that has unlimited resources and no qualms with getting anyone into LSU if you can play football. And it still hasn't elevated to this point yet.
The frustrating part about it all for me is like all the limitations he had at Notre Dame, being in a talent poor state in Indiana, you're
Hmm.
essentially like just that you're outside of Detroit, essentially, which there's talent there. But like you got the Catholic overtones, it's cold, and you're also in a state where there's two other Power Four teams in Purdue and Indiana. You're the only Power Four team there in LSU, although Tulane's trying to get back in that level at some point.
That's right.
You're at Notre Dame. You're getting like you're just pounding out line meat. You're just putting like one golden domer in the NFL after another. Just some 6'8", 350 pounds of just muscle. Just the like Mike McGlinchey, just like the size of an elk out there.
Right.
And then you got so like Audric Estime or I don't even know who's the. It's not Josh Jacobs. Who's the other guy that was like
Oh,
running? You
was it
mentioned it
Josh
before.
Jones? Was that his name?
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
it.
Josh Jones.
You got like tight ends out there. You get the Michael Mayer and Tyler Eifert. You're having plays
Cole
Cole
Kmet.
Kmet's,
Yeah.
and then you go to LSU, and your team has like none of that. Like you just got like you're essentially like you're essentially Lincoln Riley and at LSU, man. I mean, you lost Lincoln Riley. It's just a bunch of like, oh, let's just have our quarterback run around and throw the ball a bunch for a bunch of yards, and maybe we'll win, and maybe we'll beat Mizzou, and we'll go 9-3. At this point, I'm just like, the team just lacks an identity under him. I
Hmm.
don't think he. I think he's having an identity crisis as a human being, and oh
Too
man,
many poor boy sandwiches, I guess.
I need to go park some cars.
But no, I think the lack of identity is really interesting to consider with why it hasn't happened. Because we talked about it going into the season. Year three, normally the pop year for Brian Kelly. So this is the year where the expectations, whether fair or not, were raised for what this team was going to do. And I think their identity, if you had to boil it down, is they're an offensive team with a bad defense, but like that's not really an identity. That's just who you are, you know? And so like I think like when you think of the identity of LSU, sure, there are a lot of offenses that you can talk about that were quite impressive, whether you're talking about the Odell Beckham Jarvis Landry tandem, whether you're talking about the Leonard Fournette rushing offense that you had there, like offensive skill position talent in Louisiana, it falls off of trees. Like you're not gonna ever be hurting for that at LSU. But you also used to be DBU without like number one with a bullet in that conversation. And now you have a defense that can't stop anyone. So like what are we doing here? Like if you're not establishing identity, but you're also like we talked about just a second ago, the advantages he was supposed to have at LSU coming from Notre Dame and his recruiting ability, he's not taking advantage of those to this point.
Follow me on this. Maybe this is a good way to kind of wrap it up today. I think you can only win big at LSU with a defensive-minded coach or CEO type. I
Mm,
think it's the same sort of thing. Like you mentioned that like Purdue can only win with an offensive mind.
yeah.
I'm of the belief that you can't win. The only time the New York Jets will ever be good is with a defensive-minded head coach. You just fired one because it's just like you can't. There's it's got to fit into the ethos of the city and the area that you're in. You got to
Hmm.
be like LSU. It's like let's just react. Let's just play as fast as we possibly can, reacting. You try to skew it up there with like the Joe Brady, Joe Sloan offenses of whatever. You're basically asking some of the best athletes in the world to go down a tech, and they can't
Hmm.
execute that high of a level, and that's what we're seeing. They're thinking too much, man. It's LSU football. Go Tigers, roar.
Yeah, we like Coach O won a national championship. Coach O hasn't had a rational thought in 10 years. I swear to God. So like there is some credence to that. And like, I'll tie it to the NFL. when you look at the Cowboys' success in the 90s, you're talking about Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer, two big personalities with big brands individually, going to the biggest brand in the NFL and having success there. Then you look at what's happened since then, when you're talking about, in particular over the last decade plus, Jason Garrett just clapping his way through, a
Clap,
nine
clap,
and seven
clap, clap
season.
your hands.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're talking about Mike McCarthy, who, sure, he has a Super Bowl ring. I cannot think of a more milquetoast human being than Mike freaking McCarthy.
I mean, Dave Campo or Chan Gailey, but
Yeah.
we,
Well, yeah, but also, again, going down the horrible lineage of the past 30 years of Cowboys coaches. Like the only Cowboys coach in that span who made a lick of sense as to like fit the Cowboys brand would have been Bill Parcells.
Mhm. Yeah, because at that point, Jerry Jones is like, no, I love control more than winning. And that's kind of what happens with all of that. Oh man, I'm just sitting there with the Brian Kelly thought of it all. And I'm like, what's gonna happen? Like, what's the point? I don't see it. Like for example, like Lane Kiffin's like, okay, we're getting out of the burner phone business. Matt Luke tried and he got so far, but then it didn't really matter. He had to go to Lincoln Park or something like that. Lane Kiffin's going to come in here. He's like, I was down to Boca Raton. I've got like a third ex-wife there. Got some visors. Let's go here. Let's do something fun where nobody expects it to happen, and we're just doing it. It's like if Owen Wilson's coaching a football team, we're just doing it.
We're just, I respect them because they're out there doing it. But no, you talk about like, again, it's all about fit. And like, everyone made a ton of jokes when Brian Kelly got hired at LSU because it's so unnatural. You're talking about a dude from the Northeast going down into Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Like, culturally, it just doesn't fit. You look at Lane Kiffin, and I'm not saying he's a Mississippi guy because he's not, but I am saying that like Ole Miss has, particularly because of the sins of Hugh Freeze and everything that's happened, to some degree, you could view them as the black sheep of the SEC, like just the brother who's there and it's just they're going to cause trouble. Like they're just going to cause trouble. That's Lane Kiffin's entire career. That's what he's made his entire brand off of. It's the perfect coach for the perfect fit. And so right now you have Brian Kelly, who after 3 years, it still feels like a square peg in a round hole.
I know, man. Screaming himself, Tom Coughlin purple every step of the way. Also, Omar Bradley.
Omar Bradley.
Oh my God, it's like Omar Little League coming. Omar Bradley. That is the most. It's gonna change my life,
Unbelievable
dude.
stuff. Unbelievable stuff.
And maybe if Brian Kelly started recruiting some more Omar Bradley, some more Omars, a little bit, a fewer Bradleys, maybe he'd get this thing turned around.
I'm not ruling. There's a reason we're punting on this and not passing on it because like Brian Kelly's done enough as a college football head coach that I can't rule out the possibility that it does happen. But I can lay out the possibilities for you of why it hasn't yet.
I think that makes sense, and I can tell you why this show's happening or why it hasn't. But yes, this was 3 yards in a cloud of punt here for week 11 here on Fall Start. Yeah, we reacted and reacted semi-swiftly. Not Stephen B. Swift, but swift enough. T. Swift, DeAndre Swift, um, Swiffer. Yeah, that's what we were doing
Stromile
here.
Swift. I'm gonna throw it back to Vancouver Grizzlies.
It's all about the Grizz, man. You can follow me, John Buhler, on the X at Buhler118. You can follow Cody Williams at The Sizzle 20. You can follow the show at CFB Fall Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. I see the hand coming up there like the gauntlet. My team got its ass kicked today, and I'm going to go cry like a little bitch. So please give me a 5-star review.
Yeah, make Bueller feel better. That's the call for subscribers and 5-star reviews is just make Bueller not hate his life quite as much.
I'll get out of here with a Bueller story time real quick. So, went to a semi-formal when I was a sophomore, and I had a little bit too much to drink, and I went downtown at like the bar that was called like the Winery, and I was getting sick, and my friend comes in there, and he's like, "Bueller, are you doing okay?" And I didn't like this guy, and I go to my other friend, he's like, "What does he think? He can just walk in here and just magically make me feel better?"
Oh my God, incredible stuff.
Yeah, I did eventually feel better, but in the moment I was feeling terrible, like I am right now.
Does Cody think he can just come on the podcast and make Bueller feel better? No, I don't. I actually, I'm probably actively making you feel worse as I talk about Georgia.
Nothing can make me feel worse than seeing Carson Beck's face on a Morgan billboard tomorrow on the way home. And this is false start.